I think the only thing, where's Alexandra at?
Right here.
What do you think?
You said a blending King Kong into the background, into the environment.
You mean the lighting?
So I tried, yeah.
Yeah, it's pulled together. I like this little pop of warmth. I think that was there before, but it looks like you cooled a little bit other of it off. The only thing I might do, and I don't know if this will work, so let's see. I'm gonna go in with my, and I'm gonna see if I can apply. I don't know if I can. Let's go here. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm taking my dodge tool here, right here, which makes things a little lighter, but I'm using a rough brush. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yeah.
So what I'm doing here is I want to highlight some of this texture on his belly. And you see how it's just highlighting where it feels sort of natural? And it's still keeping the color. You see that?
Yeah.
So I'd probably come in here and just do a little bit of this and just highlight some of that texture. Just say it's, you know, bouncing around. It's this bluish light bouncing around. But I'm using that rough brush so it doesn't just look all airbrushy. It looks like it's actually the texture on his and I'm doing a little bit of both. I am sort of highlighting the texture on there, but the rough brush kind of helps it a little bit because all this all this texture on him is very reptilian, obviously, right? You can see how I can start to pull him out a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does everybody understand that?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
So what this
What's
is going
the name of that tool?
the brush I'm using?
Oh, it's a brush. Okay.
No. What I'm doing is, okay, remember our dodge and burn tools?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so one makes it lighter and one makes it darker, correct?
Yes.
So what I'm doing is instead of just getting like a regular brush, I'm getting a rougher, and I'm going to give you these brushes probably this week, actually.
Okay.
And I'm assigning it to the dodge tool. So when I highlight that texture a little bit, it's pulling the texture out, but the brush itself is also rough. So I'm just highlighting the roughness of that texture. I could use it for a rock. I could use it for
Okay,
brown.
got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So what you want to do now, I've overdone it a little bit, but I just want to get my point across. Maybe not. And this, by the way, this could work when you're doing, let's say you're doing a digital painting, if you're an entertainment person, and later on down the line, you're going to start learning things like photo bashing, things like that, which I don't think are bad things on the job. And I don't think they're bad things to speed up your workflow. I do think they're bad things when you learn them too early. And I probably said this already, too early in your education. And then what people do to people tend to, and I'd say right now, even worse than ever, they tend to go to the easiest solution because they can make something they can throw on social media, or whatever. And people go, wow, that looks amazing. It's not amazing. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm
Yes.
saying is learn these things in the right succession because those things are really good, you know. But let's say that you did a digital painting and you're using some textures that you pulled in and threw over it, you know, like in something like this maybe, which is totally fine when you're doing a job. It's going to make it go faster. But then I might go, I want to highlight that rough skin texture a little bit, or a rock or whatever. And this same technique will work on your own work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, or if you like, I usually like to paint things in. So I might use a rough brush to block in, like, I might have one, hang on. So if you look at this rock in the foreground, that's just all brush work. Does that make sense? But sometimes, you know, after the fact, I'll go in there and I'll do exactly what I'm doing here and sort of highlight some of that rough texture on there. Okay. I like to just paint it in. That way I'm really controlling it. But I mean, if I was pressed for time, I'd go and pull a texture or whatever, you know what I mean? when it comes to design work and that kind of thing, or illustration or whatever, it depends on what it is. Especially if it's design work, I'm going to do whatever I got to do to get the job done. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This looks pretty good, man. Yeah, this up here looks pretty good. Be careful with this getting very soft here. I might see if I could, there's a bunch of different ways you can do this, but let's see if I can. I wonder if it'll let me do this. I don't know if it will. Oh yeah, it does. Okay, so now I'm using my regular brush. So what we're talking about now here, when you have, and this doesn't always work, but when you get into brushes up here, now we all understand that we can assign our brushes to other tools like smudging, like what I just did with the dodge and burn tool. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
That
Yes.
we can assign different tools, right? Because it's very important, or an eraser. Okay, so what I just did is I just took my standard sort of little drawing brush that I like, because this edge to me is getting a little blurry. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I want to be able to just pull out some individual hairs out of that. So I assign my smudge tool to my feather brush, and now I can pull a few of these out. I don't want to overdo this, or it's going to get, you don't want to show too many individual hairs when you're doing something like this, but I can show a few, and I can sort of rough it up so it stops feeling so too blurred on the edges. Does that make sense? Like that. Does that make sense, you guys?
Yeah.
And he's got a little glow behind him. That's fine. Oops. Go back to this. But I'm definitely going to pull out a few of these here, and I'm being sloppy, but just get them. And by the way, when you're doing these kind of things, if you're an illustrator or whatever, and concept design, some of that stuff, the concept part of it, creating your images and all that stuff, you're using illustration techniques kind of in a different way. Go back and look at the masters of this stuff and look at their brushwork and stuff like this. And kind of look like, when you're doing digital work, this is why you need to learn how to paint, by the way, but I don't want to get into that right now. But and look at, look how furry the edges are in that, right? This is painted in casein and acrylic. But you can see he really roughed up that edge right there, right? Look at that. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yes.
But, if I look at that, I might go, ooh, that's kind of cool. That's not ripping anything off. That's just fur. You know what I mean? And it's just like, ooh, maybe make a bigger statement with it. I don't know if you need it on the other one, but there's something kind of fun about that. This guy was a badass, by the way.
Are those buildings painted in?
This is all casein and acrylic. So this is all hand painted.
Wow, those are nice.
Okay, but what you got to look at here, here's what you need to look at. There's not much going on back here if you really look at it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like you can actually, this piece is probably pretty big, so it probably took him a little longer, but you can rough out a city in paint in a couple hours. It doesn't really take that long because you're really basing that all in your simple geometry. And then in this case, then he's doing a lot of brush and scale work over it, which is brush and scale work is sort of like, it's sort of like you're using it to create a lot of very mechanical looking things, but you're really not painting much of anything, but it looks super complicated. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Like you're using basic shapes and stuff.
You're basically using basic shapes. So like if you look at this shape here, you knock in this whole shape, right? Then I'd get my scale and I'd balance it on there in my brush and go, and I'd put those darks in there, and they're going to be super straight mechanical because I'm using a scale, right? And then I'm going to flip that whole thing this way and put the lighter line, because look at that building. It's nothing but lines. It's a shape and then lines over it. You see it?
Yeah.
There's no individual windows or anything in there. And then if you look back here, it's really a bunch of cubes that are lit and dark, 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 lit and dark. You throw all that in, then you start going in with the scale again and going flick, flick, show a couple of this and a little of that and a few windows and a few of that. And it looks super complicated. Does that make sense?
Professor,
Go ahead.
is there a way to make this, like, if this was a picture, like a real picture of the city, to make it look like it was painted or like drawn like this?
That's a bad question.
Why is that?
Because why do you want to not know how to do that? Wait, what's your major?
Architecture.
Oh, interesting. So you should have some knowledge of this kind of rendering, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the program. You know, it'd be a lot easier for me, especially in the background buildings, to take a picture of the real.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yes, there. So if you look at guys like this, like if you look at Ryan's stuff here, like that's a photograph, obviously, right?
Okay.
This is painted. This shit. Probably the only thing in here. Okay, the clouds are just grabbed from a photo, right? And then, you know, this stuff he probably cut and painted in, but really all he painted was this and the ship, probably. Okay. Ryan does this a lot. And, you know, when you're presenting stuff for, like in your case, if you're talking about architecture and all that kind of stuff, I'm trying to find something that has the more, that kind of thing. Hang on. Yeah, you can throw it in. You got to make sure it's in the same perspective. And then what I would do is I'd look at I'd either do one or two. Here's what I'd probably do. If I was going to use a painted background or a standard background, I'd probably kind of think about that. I go, okay, I'm going to use this for my background. Then I kind of build a perspective a little bit in relation to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I would kind of start probably painting it in with that behind it or something. So I'm kind of aping what that photo looks like a little bit. And then, because I'm not going to try and make it match the photo exactly. And then I'm going to come in when I sort of get my whatever I'm painting in there. I'm going to look at the background and go, what do I need to do to the stuff that I put in my painting or whatever it is? What do I need to adjust to make it feel like it's the same thing we're talking about with all this stuff? What's the lighting? What time of day is it? How intense is the sunlight? Is it overcast? Like, and if I get that all, the lighting more or less kind of similar, and the level of like saturation on that day and color, it's probably going to work okay together. Does that make sense?
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, probably. And especially for presentation, because like presentation for that kind of thing, it's different when you're presenting that kind of thing. You know what I mean? That's really super. It's a super communicative tool to show people your, hey, here's what Pershing Square is going to look like or whatever. Right.
Right.
So to me, that's a little different. Okay. The reason I was saying that's a bad question is that I was thinking like, if you're an illustrator and you don't want to learn how to do this stuff, that's not good. But this class to me, it's broad, and I like getting people from like different fields and everything. And that question in that context totally makes sense. I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And like, you know, with Ryan stuff, he is a really good concept painter and all that, but he grabs this stuff all the time. And why? It's not because he can't paint it. It's because he's got time constraints, and he goes, I don't need to paint all this crap in here. I'll just throw this in here. It's still going to present fine. You know what I mean?
Right, that's exactly like where I am too. You know, the main focus is the building that I constructed or designed. Sure. The background is you know, background.
You're totally right in that context. Okay. Because you really don't want to look, if you're presenting, there's a couple things with like architectural presentation. Okay. And I know it's changed a lot where there's not as much hand stuff going on. It's a lot of 3D stuff, correct?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Now here's my problem with that. And here's where I think this can be valuable. I see. Okay. So it used to be when it was done by hand, I'd look at it and go, this stuff is so stiff. You know what I mean? It's so stiff, but at least it was done by hand. So it had a certain appeal that kind of pulled you in a little bit. Like they paint it where it looked like a nice fall day and, you know, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then now I see a lot of things that look really sterile and really clinical. I'm sure you've seen those, correct?
No, that's exactly why I want to take this class, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So what I was going to say is, like, I did an architectural thing for, I might have said this in here, for the city of Riverside. Okay. So the city of Riverside was really smart. Normally, so they wanted to develop a homeless housing development. Okay. And I have the image. I'll find it and I'll show it to you when, you know, and I just painted it. But, so what they normally do, city of Riverside wanted to build this homeless housing development in this neighborhood in, on a empty piece of property on Fairmont and Third, I think it was, right? So they called me up, and what was smart about them is normally they would go to an architectural firm to get this started, and they'd figured out, like, I don't know what they paid for an architectural firm, but it's probably a lot. And somebody at the museum goes, hey, you should talk to Mike Sheehan. He's done this theme park stuff. He does all kinds of stuff. You should talk to him because he's just a one-man band and you won't have to pay this whole overhead of the architectural office and all that kind of stuff, which was really smart. So then I went over there, met with him at City Hall and all that stuff. And then they gave me the overview of it. And I went over and looked at the property, took pictures, all that stuff, had a conversation with them, told them it was never going to happen because it's never going to happen. And the reason I bring this up, because this is a good example of this for you and also for all you guys, because, like, I'm not an architect, but I designed this thing. And the other thing was interesting is they hadn't even gone into any thought around this project, to be honest. Okay. So when I went over and walked the property, I go, there's a guy across, this is a neighborhood. I go, there's a guy across the street watering his lawn when I was out there. I go, there's no way they're going to let you build this thing. And they go, well, we have a lot of, you know, we're hoping that blah, 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 whatever. And anyway, so then I go, where's the entrance going to be? Entrance is going to be on the street. I go, okay, so here's what you're going to have happen. And then they go, we want to build a garden in the back. I go, do you have any historic data for building a garden in the back of one of these kind of things? And they go, yeah, we've done it like 3 or 4 of them. And I go, does anybody use it? And they go, no, just usually gets overgrown. I go, then why would you do it again? I go, don't put the entrance way where the people who are living there go in the front, because that's right on the street. I go, there's an alley behind it. Put your entryway where people, the daily coming and going of this place, are going in through the back. I go, if you're in a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood, and and the only reason I'm talking about this is this design, okay? If you're in a residential neighborhood, you guys probably know this. If there's a bunch of comings and goings in a residential neighborhood, nobody likes that. It makes the street too active, and it doesn't feel like a neighborhood. They're going in through the back, you're not seeing it. I go, don't put a garden in the back, put a little modern kind of waterfall, a pergola over it where people can smoke and they can hang out and they're not in front. I go, because if you don't do that, because I've seen this, if you don't do that, you're going to have 3 or 4 people stand in front of this place smoking all the time. And again, nobody in the neighborhood wants that stuff. It looks shady. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
And then, you know, and then rendered it out. And then of course they went and did the presentation community and they're like, are you insane? You're not putting this in our neighborhood. You know what I mean? Which I don't blame them, you know what I mean? But the only reason I'm bringing this up, and I never talk about money on particular jobs usually, but I mean, this is just a one-off job, right? And what I always tell people about that, like I tell it to concept designers or just, you know, designers and things, but I mean, it's your world. I mean, I probably did at the most 5 days work on that. I got paid like 20 something grand for it. You know what I mean? It's good money. And the reason I'm telling you that, because that was now, I don't know how long ago, 5 years ago, 6 years, I don't know. But I could have probably got more money on that gig, but they were looking at it going, well, I'm guessing that they probably go, if we went through the architectural firm, probably cost us 70,000. This is a deal. So when I threw out 20 some odd grand, they were like, yeah, fine. I mean, just instantly, they didn't even argue with me about it. I go, cool, which also tells me I could have got more. Okay. But those kind of jobs, when I tell people who like are working on concept design or different types of design, make sure that you've got a broad skill set, man, because that's the kind of job can just land on your plate and you're like, this is weird. This is totally easy for me. You know what I mean? That was an easy job for me. It was fun, you know?
That makes sense. Yeah. I like to see it if you can find it.
Oh, I'll find it.
Okay.
Okay. So that makes sense though, right? It's not that much different than the conversation we're having here. So your architecture, how long you been doing that?
Maybe this is like my 2nd year kind of.
So what's the plan?
Transfer to Pomona.
Good.
And yeah, get my
Cal
degree.
Poly Pomona?
Yeah.
Okay, because they got a good architecture program, right?
Yeah, they do. And it's not too expensive.
Good. You got a plan. That's good. Okay. Now execute the plan.
I will.
Good. Right on. That's an interesting field. What do you think of Frank Gehry?
I like his work. So I think at
Yeah.
times he, they might be a little overrated, but he has excellent work. I mean, I've been to the Hollyhock House. I've checked out his other drawings. He's
I
pretty
like
good.
his work. I like that approach, that sculptural approach to architecture. It's really interesting.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's like he's one of the first people that really took it to that level. He is the only person that took it to that level. But have you ever seen there's a documentary on him. Have you seen that?
No.
You should watch this documentary because it's interesting. Because I don't know if you've ever been to 3rd Street Promenade so he has a residential house in Santa Monica.
Okay.
And I don't know if he still lives there. I think he still owns it, but it's like, it's probably an expensive house, but it's not a big ostentatious house. I think he bought it before he became Frank Gehry, right?
Right.
And you would use this house just to experiment on. Okay. So if like he was shaving, or I think they say this in the movie and I'm paraphrasing, but they're like, if he was shaving or something, somebody was talking about, and he'd go, I don't get the right light in here. And he'd just go and get a sledgehammer and smash a hole in the ceiling and then come up with a solution for it, right? And he started using all these modern materials like chain link and corrugate and all that kind of stuff, right? It was an experimental house, right? And then he also did, and I didn't know this until that documentary, if you've ever been to 3rd Street Promenade, there's a really boring, total suburban parking structure there, okay? Totally uninteresting. I'm not freezing, am I?
No.
Okay. And he was having a cocktail party or something like that. And somebody at the party goes, you do all this stuff on this house? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, and you did that parking structure over there? Because it's not that far from there, a couple miles over there. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, why? He goes, why are you doing that? You know what I mean? He's like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you doing that basically McDonald's architecture when you're doing this? Like, this is where your brain is. And then he made a leap where I think he had like a 40 some odd person firm, and he stopped taking all those commissions and only started taking the ones that were interesting to him. And that's how he built that career.
Wow.
And they also show him working in there, and a lot of him working is just sitting there. He'll crumple up paper, cut paper, bend it around. And I really believe in that kind of methodology, a very loose methodology. And then you structure it. Do you know what I mean?
I see.
Now, I know you can't always do that in architecture. I get it, because he's Frank Gehry and he's got free reign and all that. But I do believe in that kind of very loose approach into a tighter approach. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, once you make it, you can pretty much do whatever you want,
Yeah. Well, then you got to figure out like, okay, how do I actually make this work? And then, okay, I can't do that. But if I change out a little bit, I'm not really losing my whole idea. But, that'll allow me the structural component. And one of the things that's interesting to me about the way he breaks up space, I'm sorry on a tangent here, but
very good,
is that he breaks up interior space into a way where it feels very explorative, where you don't know what's quite around that corner. That kind of thinking makes the place feel like you're exploring a space or you discover a space.
There's an element of mystery, which is perfect.
Which I love. I was just at the Mission Inn. You ever been to the Mission Inn?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, that's a mishmash of all these weird styles, but it somehow works.
Right, it's huge.
Okay? Yeah, and if you read the guy's story, he was traveling around the world and to Morocco, and then he came back, goes, I want to put up a Moroccan, he's just building this thing. That shouldn't work at all, right? Mm-hmm. But what's really cool about the Mission Inn is I've been there a billion times. Every time I go there, I find something I didn't know about. It just feels very like nooks and crannies and little spots and this and that. It's very eccentric. You know what I mean?
I see what
but
you mean.
Really interesting. And then you go around a corner and there's just this mind-blowing oil painting or something. It's like, this place is a trip, It's in Riverside of all places.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, that's how you do that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Could you please remember the name of the architect? It's Frank Wright? Frank Wright?
Whose architectural firm? Frank Lloyd
Yeah,
Wright?
yeah.
Frank Lloyd Wright or Frank Gehry?
That you are talking about.
Frank Gehry.
Okay.
Gehry, I think it is.
Don't remember the name of the documentary? No.
Huh?
You don't remember the name of the documentary?
Oh, you can just look it up. Frank Gehry documentary. I don't remember that.
I will check it out. Thank you.
He sketches like that too, man. He just scribbles all over the place. And I think that kind of free thinking is what you need. Even if you can do something that isn't, you know, if you're going to go out and do architecture or whatever, there's a certain reality to that. Like when I was doing the thing for City of Riverside, I went and sketched in that neighborhood, and because that neighborhood is all Victorian houses, right? So I've got to speak to the Victorian house thing in that neighborhood. I can't just put this McDonald's looking architecture in there. It's totally obnoxious.
Yeah, you need context.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost like people putting those McMansions in like a regular neighborhood. You know what I mean? Where you get it's obnoxious. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't really want to look out my window now, and you're looking into my backyard. It just changes the whole nature of the neighborhood. And that's a very specific neighborhood. And by the way, it's been gentrified really nice now. There's all these beautiful gentrified. I don't know if you can walk through that neighborhood, man, but they did a program where you could buy the houses there for like $10 as long as you agreed you were going to fix it up and put X amount of money into it. And it totally worked.
Wow.
So these neighborhoods, you get all getting gentrified, and these houses are beautiful houses, beautiful Victorian houses. So I went through the neighborhood and I just sketched houses. I'll find that too.
Okay. Sounds
And
good.
just to get the flavor of it. And I started pulling out ideas like I could use that railing because it doesn't have a lot of decoration on it and it'd be inexpensive. And I can also sort of do a flattened version of that and put it against the thing where I have or the wall, maybe only like a foot space, put landscaping behind it, you know, plants, and it's going to give it a certain amount of depth and feel like it's a balcony or that kind of thing, but it's not a functioning thing, right? But it just starts to break up the building and starts to organic up the building a little bit. So it doesn't feel, because I know how that's going to get built. It's probably going to be a very simple stucco construction. They're not going to have this money to spend on it. So I've got to make it look like it's got that surface detail like the other surrounding things without using a lot of surface detail. Does that make sense?
Kind of, yeah, that makes sense.
You know, you have to, you know, it's always based on budget. I don't care what you're doing, you know?
True.
Even Frank Gehry, I mean, he's got God knows what those, but I just saw some towers he's doing somewhere. And those, I'm not sure if I like it, but I've only seen one rendering of it and they're kind of odd, you know? You know, you ever seen the Team Disney building over in Disneyland? It's it's backstage.
Is that right on the freeway or is that?
Yeah, it's right off the freeway. It's like green galvanized or green anodized metal.
I really like it.
I do too. If you look at the front of it, it's a trip. Have you ever looked at the front of it? Because you got to be backstage, I think, to see the front of it.
No, I've only
Try it. You can find pictures of it. It's sort of like, you know, where you come in the entrance, as I remember it. I think the other side's like a yellow anodized, I think. And like sort of where the, you know, how entrance is, he sort of like warped the entrance. So it's kind of trippy. Like he didn't go I think he was still figuring it all out then. I'm not sure. I don't know if he'd done Bilbao yet or whatever. I don't remember. But anyway, he just kind of warped the entrance. It's just kind of cool, you know, like that playing with materials and all that kind of stuff. So when are you going to go over there? When are you going to apply?
To Disney?
No, to Cal Poly.
Oh, soon. Honestly, I have one more semester besides it. Yeah.
We're a 2-year institution. Do it in 2 years.
I've been here for 3, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Fine. But I'm always just because I know students who stayed here for literally have stayed here for 6 years. And I'm like, okay, now you're going over to Cal State Fullerton. That's another 2 years or so. So that means you could have had a master's. You actually could have had a doctorate because you've now been here 8 years in this process. And I'm all about get your education and get on with it.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Don't, you know, school, and you don't sound like this type to me, but school for some people can become like sort of a social club.
Okay.
And they become comfortable and they don't want to be. When I was at Fullerton, I had a certain point where I went, I'm a big fish in a little pond. You know what I mean?
Huh.
I need to get into a bigger pond. I need to go into a bigger pond and get my ass kicked. You know what I mean? So I went over to Art Center and got my ass kicked. And then you'll go over to Cal Poly Pomona and maybe get your ass kicked, which is good, right?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
You want to be in that pool of, you know, really interesting talent where you're challenged. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're going into that first crit. I had this happen to me at Art Center. Going into that first crit, and you're like, oh my God. Like these people are light years ahead of me. What the hell? I thought I was a big deal over at Fullerton, you know?
It humbles you. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah. Which I think a good dose of humility is good.
Yeah, true.
Where's Andrea?
Here.
Not bad. What do you think?
It came out okay. This was actually, I was working on this midweek and I had saved this probably like Wednesday, and yesterday I had free time. So I was working on it and my file had got corrupt and my layers totally deleted. So I actually had like a reflection on the bottom of them. I had added puddles. I had added a cab.
This is why I said at the beginning of this class, always save everything in 2 places.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
always save everything in 2 places. Could be a Google Drive and your computer. It could be a thumb drive in your computer. It could be an external hard, whatever. Always save it, because you got to make that a habit. Because if you're working on something for a client and then they go, hey, what happened here? Oh, well, this, that. If they hear that, they don't care. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? Like they don't care. They
Definitely.
go, oh, you just didn't deliver. Okay, that's it. You didn't deliver. That's all.
Yeah,
you care about.
of
You know what I
course.
mean? And I was the same way. If I hired a freelancer and they didn't deliver, I didn't want to hear it. I was like, I do not care. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't care if your mother died. You need to deliver. You know what I mean?
definitely. Yeah, so when
okay.
I tried to go back in and add more elements, obviously the rain filter was going to be behind it, so it just didn't look realistic anymore. So I just left it.
You know, it still satisfies a requirement for this.
Okay.
What did you use for the rain? Did you just blur it?
I added a black background, and then I added a noise filter to that, and then I added the smart filter and added motion.
Ah, that's smart.
Thank you.
So you've used Photoshop before?
No,
Wow, really?
no.
You figuring that out already? That's exactly what I want.
Yeah, I was kind of on Google and YouTube the whole time throughout this project.
Yeah, but you figured out a solution. That's what's cool. Like that's the hard part. So I'm just going to take some of this blue here and I'm just going to be sloppy. And I'm going to see if I can kind of get a little bit of that quality of that light in here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And by the way, using something like that where you go, hey, how do you do rain? And you look at somebody's solution for it, it's totally smart, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I didn't even know how I was going to do it. I just looked it up on Google and just followed it step by step. It probably took me like an hour to figure it out, but I mean, it happened.
Yeah, but what I like is that you figured it out.
Yeah.
And by the way, I do that all the time too. I go, man, if I don't know how to do something, I'll go to Google too, and I'll go blah, blah, blah. And then sometimes I'll look at it and I go, well, that's a stupid way of doing it.
Yeah.
But usually I'll find something. I'm looking for something that's probably really simple, or I'm just looking for like, oh, okay, that's okay. That kind of thinking. Maybe I don't do it exactly the same way, but it just gives me kind of a starting point, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Because I mean, nobody knows how to do everything with this stuff. I mean, there probably is somebody like that, but it ain't me. Oh, that's better.
Okay.
So
It definitely blends better.
Yeah, that's better. A little more. So what we're trying to do all the time here with what I'm talking about here. I don't even think I'm going to pull a little bit of her flesh tone back in there. Just I'm erasing out a little bit. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Because I don't want her to start looking dead or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And then I want to get like back here. I've got some warm light in the back of her, so I can probably pull some of this off. So I can warm up the back of her a little bit. And then like these little cool shadows are fine. Maybe a little there. And same thing with him. I'm going to pull a little off of him. There's some warm light in that same direction up here, so I can warm up his forehead a little bit. And then just, be selective about it, right?
Definitely.
And then it should sit in there a little better. Yeah, see?
Okay, cool.
Because look, that feels a little more cut
Yeah.
off. And I'd still
Definitely.
take out, so going like this and going, well, I do like some of that warmth in there. So I'm going to go in here and very selectively probably take my eraser and just pull some of that warmth back in, because I don't want them to look, like I said, like, by the way, has anybody seen Goliath, that show Goliath?
No.
Ugh, don't watch the second season. And the reason that popped in my head is like, I don't want him to look dead or whatever. Huh?
Oh, I thought it didn't deliver.
No, it was the first season was awesome. And it's not that the second season, I don't know why it popped in my head because I was talking about them looking dead. The second season is super disturbing. Like to the point I wish I hadn't watched it. like really just like
Like that bad.
it's weird to me that can even be shown on TV. That's how disturbing it was.
Oh, wow.
And it's not that it's not a good show or whatever. It's just like, holy smokes, this is dark. See, like his hand, I don't want it to look corpse-like. So I just have to go in there and be very selective, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, see how that pulls him into the scene a little better?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
then I might even go a little further here and go, because this is what's kind of fun. So I might come back here and grab my brush again. And I'd probably have to find what kind of brush I'd want to use for this. But I might be able to come in here and get a little bit of now that cool highlight on there, because that's a pretty strong light source right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could probably hit him a little bit with it. Oops, I'm on the same one.
Okay.
And I could go pretty strong on that. And then I'll knock it down.
Okay.
But you can see how I can start to really play with these key lights, edge lights,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And then I'm probably again going to come back in here with my smudge tool. I'm going to make it a little, subtle it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always this, I think it's good for Photoshop, especially, okay, so this class obviously is called Photoshop for Digital Artists. So we want to always go a little more than just do an overlay, then do this, and then use layer blend, and then use this filter. You want to actually get in there with your tools here and there and start learning how to really push these ideas, right?
Yeah.
Okay, really good.
Thank you.
These are like, I haven't gone through all of them obviously, but these all look pretty good to me. Okay.
Hello.
What do you think? Where'd my tool set? Oh, there it is. What do you think?
I was pleased with it until it came to writing the title because it just looks really out of place.
That's a type thing, right?
Yeah.
What's your major?
I am acting and directing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So what made you want to take Photoshop?
I'm just, like, I have so many film ideas, like original film ideas, and it's like I want to convey them, and I'm just not a good artist. So I actually have like 10 movie ideas, like all planned out, and I want to be able to create posters for them. Like I can't draw, but I figured Photoshop
No,
would
but
be like,
so what you
oh.
can do, and you got to kind of remind me this as we're going along, and I got to also remember it because I this is why I like to know what you guys are doing.
Mhm.
So, you know, Jordan's doing architecture. I want to keep that in mind. And then if you're doing that, I really want to keep that in mind. What's really interesting about that, there's a lot of things where I wouldn't even think it more as movie posters, but maybe if I wanted to convey the flavor of something, or like, hey, it's kind of like this, and maybe I got three, you know,
Yeah.
people do that with everything. It's a presentation thing, right? And you kind of go, if you were pitching it, you could maybe have 3 images. And like a good thing you could, I'll try and find them, but I don't know if it wasn't in this class. I was in another, I think it was in another class, but I went anyway. I was going to a Carter Goodwood show at the Gallery Nucleus, or Nucleus Gallery, whatever it's called. And upstairs they had Carter Goodwood. Downstairs they had this concept art from Into the Spider-Verse, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't find very interesting, that kind of work, but it is what it is. And I don't mean that I don't find it interesting. I don't find it interesting because it's just something that's designed to communicate an idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But what's interesting about it, if I can find it, it mostly looked to me like very photoshopped and photo bashed.
Mhm.
And, you know, so they got Tom Holland or whoever plays that, you know, his face, and they stick it on, you know, whatever. And you can even move the form around a little bit and then kind of paint it back together a little bit without really having a lot of knowledge, you know. And then it was all about lighting and drama, and the background's a big city, and it's raining, and it's all this kind of stuff. And it helps you convey the feel, or the, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
yeah.
what kind of world this is, and pull people into your idea. You know what I mean? So we can
Yeah.
totally accomplish that. Okay.
That's cool.
And again, this satisfies what I want to do. I think you understand. So you're playing around with filters here, right?
Yeah, I wanted it to look kind of like hand painted. I like that feel, like when we were looking at before the last class.
So we'll get a little more into that, the oil filter and all that kind of stuff, and also just different tricks to make things look painterly or whatever. Okay.
Okay.
And it's basically usually using a combination of tools. And then what I want to push you guys on is having some decision, and you guys are doing that, having some of your own decision making going on. Okay. And learning, again, like one of the key things with what you just described is lighting. One of the simplest things, or to at least know about when you're doing this kind of thing where you're combining a lot of elements, is starting to understand, like a painter thinks, where you go, hey, I've got to put all this in the same lighting. Like if you can just get that concept, that's the first step to being able to put a lot of elements into a scene and have it actually start to look. And that doesn't matter if you're doing it in Photoshop, if you're doing it in Paint, doesn't matter. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But in Photoshop and things, there's a lot of tools to use, obviously, that you can sort of, as long as you understand that concept, you can start thinking about that and making and working on it, right? And I think everybody in here is understanding that, so I'm not worried about that. So I also like that you're playing around with the filters, okay?
Yeah.
Because right now, again, this is a mechanics class. What I'm looking for you guys to do is execute what I'm asking you to do. And yeah, I'm going to talk about design and all that and then go down the rabbit hole a little bit on it. But I'm not really judging this in the way I would if it was an illustration class or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I actually want you to play around a lot. And I don't want people, I get people sometimes and they start going off the deep end on all this weird stuff. And it's like, that's not what I asked you to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this is what I asked you to do. So, okay, good. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Where's Chris?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, you cleaned up the background a lot.
Yeah.
Right on. I like that. See that? Right? Here, maybe again, I might do my little pull out just a couple of hairs here. Oops, that's too much. Try and do it in a natural way. You know, and I still probably have to clean them up a little. But, you know, just to pull it over the background a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to find out, like when we do this next thing we're going to start doing, where we're doing a fairly complex selection, it works really well when you have what we're going to do next. It works like if you have this picture of, I'm talking about this foreground person. What I'm looking for is something that either, because he's very light value, I'm looking for a really dark value background against that, or vice versa, right? And then I can start using some of my combined tools to separate those two things out. Now, if he's standing in a forest and he's getting shadowed and there's a bunch of stuff behind him, it's not going to work that well because it doesn't have that clear contrast. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And also when they do, so we're going to talk about hair or whatever, it works a lot better if you've got, again, like a white background or something like that. And if you were doing, like if you're doing shoots for, you know, if you're manipulating or whatever, models or whatever for a magazine or something like that, like Vogue or whatever, and you see it all the time where they put the masthead behind their heads and their hair's like going out over it. And you're like, how the hell did they get that so, all those little hairs and everything? It's because they're getting very clean photography on a white seamless background probably, right? Because all those people have to work together. So any questions on this?
Not really.
Have you used Photoshop before?
I have experience with like other art programs, so this just came naturally to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looks pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah, Trump. Where you at?
I'm here.
7 minutes late, by the way.
So I turned it in on time and then I adjusted some more stuff and then I resubmitted it.
Well, I didn't close the folder, so it's kind of on me. Usually I close the folder. This guy's a scumbag too. Now here we're getting a little blurry on Biden's hair, right?
Yeah, it was a really low quality image.
Yeah, that's tricky. Okay, now that's getting into where I might have to go back and paint some hard edges back in there and then soften them up the way I want. You know what I mean? If you're using really, this one's pretty clean. Now here, again, this I might kind of come in here and pull, just because I want to have I want to control my edges. So I might kind of come in here and shape out using some of that color from behind it.
Yeah.
And then again, I might come in here and sort of pull a few things. Oops. Pull some things back out of it again. I don't know why that's not working. That's weird. That's weird. Oh, it's too small. Anyway, I'd probably come in here and pull a couple things back out. Might soften the back of his head up a little bit. So what I'm always trying to do, I think you guys are seeing, is I'm always trying to make everything look as much as I can like it's in the same environment, right?
Yeah.
And part of that's maybe softening up the back of his hair here a little bit. And then I might even go.
Are you just using a regular brush in the black color?
I'm using, right now, I'm using a, what am I using? Yeah, I'm just using a brush. And I'm just sort of extending out his hair a little bit, just shapy, to get it to go over what's behind it in a clean way. What I don't want is a really razory edge. I want to keep that edge as, you know, if it needs to be a little softer, or maybe a little softer here, not there, and that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear you.
Then another thing I'm always going to look for, and this, you know, I know because this class is called Photoshop for Digital Artists, I can go a little further if I want, but I might even go, oops. I don't want Siri.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
No, I can't. There. I might take some of this warmth off this tiger. Let's go here. And I don't know if I would use this brush. I'm just trying to do it fast. Off this tiger here, it's not light enough, so I want to get something a little more warm. And again, I might try, see if I can find an overlay that'll let that sit there like that. See how that's just subtly warming him up?
Yeah.
And I'm just going to put a little bit of that because there's a big warm thing right next to him, right? Then I'm going to go back and forth, like put it in like that's a little too heavy on his lip, but just that. And then maybe a little bit of that. And what that's all going to start to do, this isn't, like his jacket isn't a super reflective surface, so it's not gonna, it might catch a little, but not much. You know, and then I might do, his is very, he's catching light from the left. And I just, you know, I might, you can even see here on this guy, look how much light he's catching on this side of his head. Was the tiger in that picture with him for real?
Yeah.
Okay, so see how he's getting all that reflected light on him?
Mm.
That's a big tool you can use to put things in the same lighting. Does that all make sense?
Yeah. So maybe I'll take like the color off of his face and use that to go.
You know, just all this kind of stuff you can, you know, and even douchebag up here, I could throw some under his face a little bit. You know what I mean? Because it's down below him.
Yeah.
Kobe could maybe, I don't know, Kobe maybe not because he's way down. He's so far up here. The only thing I might do with Kobe is just give him a hint here and there, just to say he's in the same environment again, right?
Yeah, I thought about just giving each of them like a glow instead.
Sometimes they do that. Like lately I've been seeing these Marvel posters that they're trying to, everybody's always trying to do Drew Struzan, but they're doing, now it's kind of morphed into a digital version.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really well done. I mean, they're really well done. I don't find them nearly as interesting as traditional movie posters or whatever.
Yeah.
But for that type of poster where they're using Photoshop and everything, they're really well done, you know.
Yeah.
And they're not a bad, let me see if I can find one. They're probably got a lot of this kind of thing going on in them, just at a hyper level.
Yeah, because I mean, mine is pretty much inspired by the Avengers posters too.
Well, let's look at two things here. So I saw, yeah, these are them right here, I think. Yeah, here. Okay. Oops, what did I just do? Let's look at this real quick. Now, one thing they're doing is they're giving everybody a back glow. Look at that. See that?
Mhm.
So that really can help you. Now, what you got to do is they're also putting in like all this streaky stuff and all this design stuff. Then they go, look, I think we talked about this. Have you noticed that every single movie poster you see or piece of concept art is a warm, cool color scheme? Right?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it pops.
Yeah, it looks bitchin'. You know what I mean? It looks cool. You know what I mean? That's why. And look how it like that cool just pops that warm out of there and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
And then so when you create this much of an artificial environment, because this isn't a real environment at all, it's not even trying to be, right? Then you can hyper control the color and go, and it actually makes you easier for you to start making everything work in the same environment. Because you're like, oh, I'm going to put a big warm light over here like they did on the bottom. And now everything on that side, I'm just going to, and that's a very lit warm light. I'm going to cast that all over these people. And it's going to put everybody in the same environment. And then I'll do the same thing up here with the cool. And then I'll have these streaks that are warm and I'll get a little warm pop on the side. And you can really control the environment, right? Like this. Like even this, man, I mean, that hair is not that separated, but that you can see where they pulled it out a little bit on his hair and everything, and it works great. He's got this rim light here. And these are probably, I'm guessing, stills that they just give them from the movie, right?
Yeah.
To the poster artist.
I would think so.
Look, here's a fold. I mean, I've gotten things not for movie posters, but for other stuff like Hulk and all that kind of stuff when I was working on product for that. And they just give you a style guide with like a billion, a whole bunch of images in it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And even and blah, blah, blah. They might have even built this image already. It might have been in the style guide. This poster might have been in the style guide. And somebody just goes, well, there's our poster. And they put the type on it and they're done, right? You just never know how they, especially now. It's just different now. But it's an effective poster. I'd prefer hand painted, but whatever. Okay, so when you start going further with this, just think about that. If you went further with this and you created a very hyper designed environment like they did, where they have an explosion, so there's my red or my warm, so on and so forth, right? And once you control it, it makes it a little easier to control the environment lighting wise, yeah?
Yeah.
You have any questions?
No, I think everything went pretty smoothly.
Good. Oops, what did I just do? Where's Cindy at?
Hi, I'm right here.
Same thing here. I'd probably loosen that up a little. Looks like you did a little bit. What do you think?
I think it came out like okay. I wasn't like super happy with it, but
you can see I'm pulling out a few more hairs on here. Really subtly. Again, I'm using my smudge with my just simple brush because I don't want it to fuzz it up too much. Now I might switch that at some point. And there's a lot of ways to do this, obviously. Maybe I'll go, let's see what this does. Oh no. Okay, so you guys, by the way, we'll get into this more next week, but see how there's a symbol next to these brushes? Can you guys see that? So like this one with the finger, that's a smudge tool, right? I can't really assign it to another task. Okay. But if I have a brush, usually, like this pencil sketch thing isn't assigned to anything particular, so I can assign it to an eraser or a smudge tool. But these ones that have a icon next to it, like this one right here is a mixer brush. This is a regular brush. Well, that's one I made actually. So on and so forth. Does that make sense? So if they've got that little symbol next to it, it means they're for a specific task. Okay. And I might see if I can just soften a few things up. I don't want to over soften it. And I don't want to get fuzzy, but that's a little better. You see that?
Mhm.
So we always want to, you know, like this arm looks pretty good. What did I just get? Yeah. It's not bad. It's not bad. I like the way it fades out down here. You thought about that? I could do a little bit of work on that again on the cat, a little, not much. It doesn't look too bad. And again, I might pull some of this in here. Same drill as what I said before. Because I've got, if I got some light in here, I might want to, you know, sometimes I like to bounce it around a little bit. And I might, again, get a rough brush here. So that's a smudge. I don't want that. Let's see what this looks like.
I really want your brushes.
You're going to get them this week. Okay. Plus, I'm going to show you how to make them. Okay.
Okay, cool.
And I'm going to show you how to make reactive brushes, which means if you want to go in and you'll see, but when you want to go in and do I don't know if I mentioned this, but let's see. Like that kind of stuff, right? Like all this leaf work and all this foliage and all that stuff I did with a custom brush that I made. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you're doing concept work or anything like that, or, you know, just illustration, period, digital illustration, I'm not going to paint. I mean, I block it in the same way I paint, but then if I want to dance some leaves over it, I can just make a custom brush that's based on my leaf shapes. I usually take 2 or 3 leaf shapes out of something I already painted so that stylistically it makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I could come in here and take a little bit of this. Well, I'm still on smudge. That's what's going on. Yeah. I don't know if this brush will work. Yeah, that's not bad. So I could come in here and dance some of this around here. And I'll adjust it. And I'm not going to leave it like that, obviously. And then maybe I'll come in here and just knock some of it back out a little bit. And then again, I'll probably see if I can, you know, if I get lucky, I can find a overlay that'll kind of work with it. And I, you know, I'd still have to go in and adjust it and all that kind of stuff. And if I can't find one, then I got to figure out another way to do it. I could probably use, let's see. Yeah, I don't find one here. I'd probably use one, find one that sits back into the fur a little bit. And then, you know, maybe knock down my opacity. And then I'd have to go in and manipulate it a little more. That's not too bad, actually. Yeah, that's not that bad. I just have to come in here now and soften up a few edges here, like here. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And now we're just getting a little subtle bit of that light landing on that cat, right?
Yeah, I see it.
The other thing I might do is here. Can I get like a secondary color in here to make it a little more dramatic? I always throw colors down, then I adjust them. I don't like that smudge tool. Hang on. Let's go here. Where are we? Let's try. Let's just for the hell of it, try that. And I could sort of build up another color in here. I just have to do it real subtly, like. You know, and I just come in and maybe get a little bit of life going on in the eyes, right?
Yeah.
And same thing here. I might come in here and make a little more statement with the eye and then come in here and shape it out. I might just take the color next to it to shape it out. I'm just carving back into the eye and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Any questions?
No.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, looks good. Where's Isaac? Okay, I remember this one. Oops, shoot. Is Isaac here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Really quiet or low sound. What do you think?
I like it, but I think I still need to work on my hair. It just didn't come out as well as I thought.
I think what I would do here so he doesn't get lost here, also be careful where he lands in this person's crotch, right? Here, I'd probably come in here and give this a little bit of some highlights from that light above to separate him from the background. And again, same drill. I'd come in here and I'd manipulate it and all that. I wouldn't just leave it the way I just did it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that'll separate him if he's getting a little, or it might not even be that I have to pull all this in here. I might be able to get lucky and go, I'm going to go back to my burn or dodge tool again. Or maybe even my color dodge tool. Let's try that. Yeah, let's go here. It's a little too much. I'd have to knock down the saturation and all that. And also, I think I want it to go into the dark. So if you look up here, hang on, let me get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. If you look up here, it has mid-tones. I want it to really apply to the shadows, so I'm going to put it in the shadows. Then let's see what that does. That's a little better. See how it's just lightening it up? It's actually, so when we use the, that's actually fine. So see how he's starting to pop out of that dark mass a little better?
Yes.
I got way too big a hit on here. I'd do it more subtly. Other than that, I think it looks pretty good. What do you think? It's okay? Good?
Yeah.
Any questions?
No, not right now.
Okay, good. Oh, I like that. I like the type in there. That's cool. I don't have a lot to say about this. Where you at?
Hi.
What do you think?
I mean, overall, I was pretty content with it. I think there's just some like blemishes that I could have kind of went over. Um, but yeah.
Well, you're probably never going to make anything you don't think you can make better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, overall, it turned out a lot better than I had thought. So yeah.
Is that so? That's a ground plane underneath her, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I might have put a cast shadow on there, but that's probably about it.
I'm sorry.
I might have put a cast shadow on there.
Yeah.
So when you have her on her own layer, you could just, easily separate her out.
Mhm.
That's how I usually do it. I'm going to do this super half-ass. But you have it on her own layer, you can just reselect her, obviously. And then take this. Make a new layer. Take a gray value. Fill that selection. Then I'd probably have to manipulate this a little bit. Oops. And then there's a tool up here, you guys, so we've gone through these transform tools, correct? So here's another one. It's called warp. And I can pull this so it'll kind of start to lay over the ground plane a little better. Can also go up here, right here, where it says split or whatever. I should be able to, it's weird, it's not doing it.
Are you doing it?
Yeah, so I put the grid back on it. You can put it right here. It says grid 3x3, or I could go 4x4, depending how many points you want. You don't have to do that either. You can just do it without that too. Hang on, go back to edit, transform, warp. There it is. So you can see here, it's showing me the grid, but I can just kind of freehand pulling things here. And I could really help get it to conform over that ground a little more. Because I want that, to feel like it's on the ground, obviously. I'm going to pull this part down a little bit like that. And then this is just a gray, so I can put it on multiply. And then I'd have to soften up the edges like we always do. And they wouldn't be that hard edge if you just select, if you just took your selection of the girl that you have. Mine are hard edge because I use the polygon lasso tool. So I'm going to go up here, filter, and I could just go a little bit of, I don't want too much. Gaussian blur. That's what too much. Like a little more like that.
Cool.
And then I could probably come up here and go, is that the right value? And go to my levels tool. Just go, yeah, I don't want it too light actually. How about right there? See how it gives her a little more of a floating feeling? It actually adds quite a bit to it. That's it, right? Yeah. Now, this is another really cool environment where I could have a color down. I mean, I like that it's monochromatic, but now I could go in there and just kiss it with a little bit of color. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If I wanted to get that little bit of warmth or something coming up from the bottom, whatever, okay? Yeah. It's a nice piece, though.
Thank you. Oh, can you show me how to get to the dodge burn tool?
It's right here.
Okay.
See this little tool right here?
Yeah.
So that lightens it.
Okay.
And this little one with the hand darkens it. Okay, now here's the thing. I'll show you some other trick with that later. But here's the thing with the dodge and burn tool. I probably said this, but I want to make sure. Sometimes you use it and you go and make this a little darker, and it'll just totally soot up the color where it gets really ugly, blackish, grayish. And that's when it's not really working well for that. And the same thing can happen with the dodge tool where it just starts getting bleached out, where it doesn't have any color left. It's just white. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And also you have tools up here to adjust it, just like you do for everything right up here. You could also probably, I don't need that. If I have this, then I can come here and this little thing right here where it says range, that's telling it like, do you want this to affect the highlights? Do you want this to affect the midtones? Do you want this to affect the darks, right? So if it's reacting in a weird way, check that and go, oh, I've got it on highlights and I'm actually going into a dark area or vice versa. Does that make sense? So you got to be aware of that. Here's the exposure. That means how strong it is. So if it's really knocking it to white or really knocking it to black, back that off. Okay. And then this is just, we don't need that right now. Is that the only question you got?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All these tools, like what you got to learn, and I think you guys are doing it, is you got to learn when to use what, right? Because sometimes you get stuff, man, and people just go in and they just like, they get a soft brush with the burn and dodge tool, and it just looks hideous. It's just this ugly, airbrushy, colorless nonsense. It doesn't make any sense, okay? You always got to think design when you're doing this stuff. Check in the chat, hang on. Somebody's saying something about I think I already put up the grade for this, didn't I? Or the assignment. Where you at?
Hello, here I am.
Okay, so now I can read her a lot better. Remember, she was getting dark in there, right?
Yeah, I actually completely took her out. I just deleted her layer because I had her saved somewhere else and I just redid it completely.
Good. And then what did you do? Did you cool down the tree trunk?
Yeah, I think so. As soon as you showed me how to do the tone shift, I was like, oh, like the value shift.
Yeah.
I went right in and I was able to like hash everything back into like a good value. So that worked like immediately.
Yeah, that's okay, because that's value, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's one of your key components when you make an image? Value, right?
Yeah.
Contrast, temperature. That's why I'm always talking about temperature. Temperature is one of your most important tools, and I don't think it gets talked about enough. Okay. And maybe that's because I'm a plein air painter and a painter that I'm very conscious of that. But like I hear it touched on a little bit. Sometimes I don't even hear it touched on in color theory. And it's like one of your big tools is temperature. You know what I mean? And that doesn't just mean, warm, cool. It's like, no, you can have all these subtle color. I probably said this, but when I look at my example of that is when I'm looking at like trees up here where I live, as I'm in the mountains. In this particular area, if I ask a layperson and I go, what color is that tree? They'll go, it's brown. But then my question is like, what temperature brown, right?
Yeah.
And up here, the trees are purple, right? Like, and I can say that to people who aren't artists and they won't get it, and that's fine. But usually if I have a student or something like that, and I say that to them, and first they'll go, what are you talking about? And I go, stare at that tree for a while with that knowledge in your head now, and you'll see it. And then they do. And I go, that's your first step into understanding very complex temperature ideas, right? Like, don't ever paint anything. See, this is what people do in traditional media is they go, oh, brown tree. I get a bunch of brown burnt sienna and I paint that tree. That looks hideous. You know what I mean? It looks hideous. Yeah. It's like you got to mix that color. Now it's different in this environment, but if you're aware of this, you'll know how to do it, right? Or you'll be aware of it. Then late in the day, all the tree trunks and the ground and everything, because the ground's purple too. The tree trunks and the ground, because it's, the sun starts getting more influence on everything. Everything starts to warm up, and then it shifts. The temperature shifts, right?
Yeah.
And then if you go out on the rim where it really gets the light, there's a certain time of day where that whole thing just catches fire. It's just a beautiful orange everywhere, right? And I'm always cataloging those things in my head because I can use them, right? I can use all those things. And then in some cases, like with this tree trunk, it can be very subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or I can go like here, I don't know where the moon is in here. So I can just say, Maybe I'll see if I can take a little more of the same color. See if it comes out as blue. Hang on. I'm going to lighten this up a little bit. I probably don't want to go too much with it. Put it on a different layer because I want to play with it. And now I could say maybe she's catching a little bit of moonlight on this side. And I'd be more subtle with it than that. I know I'm being super ham-fisted here. Maybe just a little of that. And you already got a warm on this light, but see how that little thing on the back of her head sort of defines it and puts it into the environment?
Yeah, I don't know if you can tell, but there is some blue like on the back of her arm and on that side of her head. It's just a little dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'll go here. And again, I always just give it a shot and go, is there anything that looks better? Just on my overlays. I always just go to these different things to test myself and see if it's right or not. Yeah, there's probably, there was one in there, but I don't know where it was. You know, and then sometimes I'll go, well, I like the way that incorporates into the hair, but it's too much. So then I'll just knock it down a little bit. That's a little better. You know, and then I'll go in and do my manipulation and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Good. What do you think?
Yeah, as soon as I started fixing it up, it looks a million times better. So I think the biggest thing is I was at that just being able to change the values. Because I was having this
go ahead.
I was just gonna say I was having these issues with where everything just became super dark, and I was like, how do I push everything back without affecting the tones that I put in?
Sure. And what I like about all this stuff, and it can be in any class really, is that you start to see that like the little things that we do really aren't big giant leaps, right?
Yeah.
And look at what we're talking about. Have you had basic design?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm actually technically graduated. I just had I had a free semester, so I came back because I haven't done any digital art.
But what are we talking about? I always say this to students. I go, look, you know what you're going to access? I don't care how long you've been doing this. What are we going to access? We're going to access everything you learn in basic design and color theory, right? So you're coming in here, we're talking about value, contrast, color temperature, you know, shape relationships. It's all basic design. It's all basic color theory. It's all fundamental stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's weird because you don't realize that when you get into it, you go, ooh, and yeah, you'll get into more complex technique or whatever. But once you get that under your hands, all you're back to again is basic design again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just circle right back to basic design. And when you're sitting there talking to an art director or your team or whatever, somebody on your team's going to go, that thing's getting lost in there. You need to punch that value in there. You know, it's basic design language, right? Basic design language in the commercial environment, what do you want to call it? Career environment. And art history. You need to have art history. You need to have some background in art history because a lot of art directors, not just a lot, most of them, they're gonna. I don't care if they're talking about a Thor movie. They're gonna be referencing a bunch of art history. You know, that's just how it is, right? Like that Thor. Yeah. I'm just using Thor as an example. I'm sure they went right back to Nordic mythology. You know, I saw this really bizarre kind of this. There's this guy I just landed on. He's a concept guy. And he's really interesting work, and he was he was showing his work for Thor, right? And they had this weird arena shapes, you know, and I'm looking at it going, wow, that's really a leap, you know, like where did he come up with that? And it was really cool. And then when I looked at it, I go, oh, it's a Nordic ship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just took that shape and like went off the deep end with it, but it's a Nordic, you know, that thing where the thing comes up like that.
Yeah.
But then he just totally warped it into this environment. And it was really cool. But I mean, you look at it, you can find those things. If you look at those movies, you can find where their reference points were. You know what I mean? Because they're not just making that stuff up. It's always based on something, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Did you put a rough brush right here on this highlight?
A rough brush.
Right there?
No, I did. I just painted it in and I changed the opacity
dissolve.
and what was that?
You go to dissolve?
No. Are you talking about how it's like a little bit grainy?
Yeah.
It didn't have a highlight on it. So I had to drag from the the lower part of the trunk, I try to use the stamp tool, but since it's like at a slant, I think it just got a little weird because I had to really like.
I know, but I like that. It feels barky.
Okay, awesome.
It wouldn't look right if you just put a smooth stroke on it.
Yeah. Oh, I guess one question. I ended up with like a lot of layers, like so many layers. Is that fine? It was like 50.
Okay, but here's what I'm going to say: as you get more and more good at this,
yeah,
as you get more and more coherent and all that, and try to work clean, and try to work smart, and try to work with the thing in your head that I'm going to hand this off to somebody.
Yeah.
Okay? And when they get it, if they get some convoluted, tangled file, they're going to be like, "What is this? It's amateurs." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had a boss when I first started. I think I told you guys this, but I didn't have any experience with digital stuff when I got my first toy job, right? And when I worked at Imagineering, I was like, fuck digital, I'm just doing everything by hand, right? And it wasn't I was anti-digital, I just knew I couldn't learn it quick enough in that environment, and I could still get away with doing things by hand. It was fine. And then when I went in the toy thing, they go, the first job I had in the toy business, they go, you have to learn digital. You got to learn digital. We'll train you. And of course they didn't. They just go, we got a presentation on Friday, better get it done. I started going to markers and they go, no, digital. And I'm like, I don't know digital. So I had to learn it very quickly. And my boss used to go, he used to make comments about how I was building a file. And it actually at that time, it pissed me off because I remember going, screw you, Dale, and build the file the way I want to build it. And now I realize actually, I thought he was trying to make me work like him. And what he was trying to do is go, dude, you're handing those files out to people and they're a mess. You know what I mean? Like they've got to untangle your mess because that's the way you're working, And I didn't realize it until later. Now I know. And then I keep trying to find this. It's really old, but I've got the style guide from I think it's the first Hulk movie. I know it's a Hulk movie. I don't know which one. And it was really interesting because that's a long time ago. It was really interesting because every now and then I get this kind of files all the time where you could tell the person who put it together was a total Photoshop jock, right? And it's a super clean file, man. And it actually had too much information in it, but it was very cleanly set up. Well, and why is that? Because that's a style guide that's going out to every licensee who's making product for the Hulk or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have some other ones, like old ones for ET and all that shit. I mean, they're old now, but it still says the same. I'll try and find them, but it's still the same concept. You know what I mean? It's like, get where you're working very clean. Like I came into the digital environment as a traditional artist who then started using all these tools as in that thinking where I'm just like, I'm just painting and I'm doing like everything I do traditionally, right? But then I have to organize that now and make sure that it doesn't just look like, certain people, usually people want their stuff organized a little bit. So when they bring it into their environment, like especially if you're doing freelance and they're getting it from you, they don't want to have to untangle your mess. They want it to be very clean when they hand it off to the team and you go, okay, Jessica made this thing. Take this part of it, and you make some packaging and you do some lifestyle branding and you do this and whatever it is, right? And they can very easily pull out of your file what they need for their work, right? Because a lot of times they're using these files really no matter what, unless you're just doing a straight up painting, whatever, like I did for that brewery or whatever, but I'm not going to give them all that stuff. I give them a flattened file. That's my girlfriend's restaurant anyway, but I would give them a flattened file, TIFF file. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if I'm doing that work outside of the company for like Disney or somebody like that, I'm probably going to give them the layered file because they're going to want to do stuff with it. They might want to pull a couple of trees out to do something over here. It just depends on what it's for, right?
Okay.
Like
so how about?
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask. So like, I like really had to do a lot of layers. It was specifically on the girl because the original picture was completely like blown out. It's in like sunlight, so there was.
Look,
a lot
I usually put quite a few layers on my stuff too.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's not unusual.
So if you were like you're saying, transferring it to someone else, would it be appropriate in that sense to just like merge everything that was just on her?
Again, it depends. Like if you were doing something like this and they hired you to do a poster design or something, you're probably just going to send them a TIFF, like a flattened TIFF at 300 to 600 DPI, probably 300, right?
Yeah.
That's it. Because they're getting a final thing. They go, there's our poster. We're done. Now, if you're working creatively with somebody, like maybe say a branding agency, and you're going, what's your major?
Illustration.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I was working, you know, because I mean, illustration can work across all kinds of things. It could be a theme park, it could be anything. But let's say a branding agency. A branding agency is going to get your stuff in there. Like, let's say they hired you as an illustrator, okay? And then you send them their stuff. Well, they're probably going to want those elements where they can start taking the elements out and creating packaging and taking certain elements out of what you're doing and scattering them around a branding concept. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's probably not just going to be like, here's an image and here's all your branding. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be like they just rebranded McDonald's. They just rebranded Burger King. They do this every X amount of years, right? And it usually all happens at the same time. I have no idea why that is. Probably because Burger King did it and McDonald's goes, oh, they just refresh their packaging. Now we got it, you know, and then it rolls and then it goes. And then you'll see, this is what's really weird. I noticed this when I was a kid in the 70s. There was a point in the 70s where if you look up the old Shell logo, it's very 60s, 70s, right? And then all of a sudden they refreshed it into this like soft, or not soft, sort of rounded shape idea. It looked very fresh and very contemporary all of a sudden, right? Which was smart, right? But then I saw like, boom, this, you know, I don't know, Taco Bell did it. And then Holiday Inn did it. And then, you know, all these various brands all of a sudden all did it at the same time. And I just saw it again a few years ago with a Chevron logo. And this was a dumb rebrand, if you ask me. And the Chevron logo had that very simplified, those Chevron things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they turned it into where it looks like a folded over ribbon. The chevrons look like a folded over ribbon. So now it's got a gradient in it, which is hard to print. Okay. Now I'm assuming they did a black and white version of it. I don't know. If they didn't, whoever signed off on that was stupid. Okay. Because now you've got to basically have the way they did it. You got to have a 4-color process print to do it, which is just not that smart. And I've never seen a simplified version of this. Usually when you design branding or logos or whatever, you have a black mark, you have maybe a 2-color mark, and then maybe a 4-color mark. So they have, you know, if we're just going to put this on stationery, we're just going to use the black mark. If we're going to do business cards, maybe we'll use the 2-color thing, you know, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
You don't want to constantly have to print 4-color process for everything because it just gets expensive. And sometimes it doesn't translate across whatever media you're putting it across, okay? So if you're doing those and those things were done in Illustrator, they all, if you look at the new rebrand of McDonald's and Burger King, it's flat vector art. It's cool. It's fun. Little 70s influenced, which I like. It's cool. You should look at it because that kind of stuff to me, you should be noticing those cultural things.
Yeah.
I mean, I was noticing that when I was 13 and I didn't know, I don't know why. I just, because my brain worked that way. I didn't know like, oh, they're rebranding. I just went, oh, they just changed it. And all of them look more modern, you know, and it was a current, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then another one that's interesting, I got to shut up about this, but another one that's interesting is the Holiday Inn actually used to have a cool, like retro logo. And then there, all of these brands, I don't know how long ago this was, 7 years ago, maybe. And I think what happens sometimes is that marketing agencies go out and go, hey, let's go pitch Holiday Inn. Let's go pitch blah, blah, blah. Let's go pitch blah, blah, blah. Let's go pitch blah, blah, blah. And they go in, they go, you need to refresh your brand. And they sell these people on this idea, right? The Holiday Inn logo that they changed it to, number one, if a marketing person came to me, I'd go, you know how much equity we have in that logo? I'm not changing that logo. What you should be coming in here and telling me is going, you have a super cool retro logo. Let's rebrand around that cool look because that's actually hip right now. You know what I mean? I would never get rid of that logo. I would never get rid of the Tabasco logo, right?
Yeah.
There's so much equity in that brand. Like, don't change that logo. That does not need to be screwed with. And there's a lot of them like that, right? Where they don't, Pellegrino, those Pellegrino bottles, leave it alone, right? Looks like it should be sitting on a table on a big spread where people are eating outside in Italy. Like, that's exactly what you want, right? It's timeless. It's timeless, right? Anyway, so they went in, they rebranded. The one I can really remember is there was a couple of them, was Holiday Inn. And if you go look at the Holiday Inn logo, it literally looks like a student logo. It's terrible. It has zero personality. Like, there's no flavor there at all whatsoever. Like, I don't know what your branding strategy is. I don't know what kind of hotel you are. And what's really weird about that is that's a legacy brand, right? That's a legacy brand. Like, why would you genericize this legacy brand where it just looks like Best Western? It just looks like every other mid-level hotel now. You know what I mean? Horrible branding. If a student would have brought me that branding, I would have said exactly what I just said. I would have said, do you even know who Holiday Inn is? You know what I mean? All right. Did I over answer that enough?
No, it's good.
I like this stuff. I love design. I love illustration. And I like talking to you guys about it because I do think you guys need to think about all these things. Okay?
Yeah.
Because if you're an illustrator, that does not mean what it meant when I grew up. What it meant when I grew up was books and print, magazines. That was about it. That's what it meant. I mean, posters, you know, but that's print, right?
Yeah.
Now it's all over the place. You might be involved in branding. You might be involved in environmental graphics for Disneyland, environmental graphics for, you know, what, who knows? You know what I mean? That's a really interesting field, by the way, environmental graphics. If you look at the environmental graphics at Disneyland, there's tons of illustration in that stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Like you can look it up, Disneyland environmental graphics. You'll find, I mean, it's great. It's great work. I mean, they do a lot of great work, period. But you know, it's environmental graphics, it's graphics for television, it's illustration, all that kind of stuff for, I mean, just on and on. You know what I mean? It's across everything. Okay. The technologies begat all these other career avenues, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. And it keeps going, right? Now they're all, you know, AR and all this kind of shit. Well, that's another industry, right? Which still doesn't seem like it's taken off, which is weird to me.
You augmented reality, is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That and like the Oculus Rift, all that kind of stuff. It's weird to me. It doesn't seem like it's taken off.
I think it's not accessible enough. It's very pricey for
Is it
not a lot
pricey?
of.
How much?
The last time I checked, they're still like $300, $400.
That doesn't seem that expensive to me for that kind of technology.
True, but I think it's just there's not a lot to use it for either.
You know what
I mean?
But gameplay, right?
Yeah, it's just there's not a lot out there.
So it's the developers.
Yeah, I would say it's probably that.
You know, it's weird because I had no interest in it. I just go, I have a feeling it just sucks. Then I was over at Disney Feature Animation doing something else, like I don't know, maybe a year ago, or I don't know, it was about a year ago, I think. And they had a presentation the day before. They have a studio there where I'd work in when I go do that stuff. And they had some of these whatever it is, VR set things set up. And the guy that I work with there, he came in, he goes, I go, why are all these here? And it had something to do with John Legend. I have no idea what they were doing. There was some presentation the day before. I don't know what it was. And he goes, you want to try it? You ever tried it? And I go, no, I never tried it. And I don't know if theirs was any better than any other. I'm assuming it was like the Oculus or whatever. I don't know. But it was pretty mind-blowing. Like it was way better than I thought it was going to be. Like it really makes you feel like you're in that environment.
Yeah.
You know? And the environment, I think where it works the best was the one that I walked into, or, you know, that I was looking at, which was much more of an illustrative environment. I don't know how good it'll work with reality. Like if you're trying to make it look super real, but when you're walking into a very illustrative environment, like a, you know, very stylized environment, it's really cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay. Where's Kayla?
I am here.
This looks great.
Thanks.
What do you think?
Yeah, I like it.
Good. See how, you know, these reflections, the light, all that stuff, this warm against, here we are again, warm against cool, right?
Yeah.
Very effective. I don't have any comments on that. You have any questions?
No, I was surprised at like once I learned all the basics, how kind of easy it was to just put this together.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
What I want you to do is forget about the I don't care what you're using. I don't care if you're using Illustrator, Photoshop. I don't care. I want you to be fluent in it, for it to happen exactly like you said, where you're starting to think about your image and the tools start to fall away and it feels natural. Have you ever used Photoshop before?
No.
Wow, that's good. You guys are moving fast, man. Where's Taylor?
I'm here.
What do you think?
I like it. I had a little bit of issue with the shadow.
In what way?
Mostly just trying to get it to not stand out as much in the water
Yeah.
compared to the actual ship.
Yeah, I think, did you fill it with a gray?
I did.
Okay. The other thing, and did you like knock some of it out so the waves sort of poke through it?
I didn't actually.
I'd probably do a little of that. And then this is another thing where I might maybe just get a rough brush and just, it's almost like a dry brush technique in regular painting, where just kind of drag it over. And I'd probably knock almost all of it back, where there's just a couple of highlights on those little waves in there. And then also I'd race out a little bit of the just a little bit here and there, so the waves pop through the shadow value, so it kind of breaks it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then it's going to feel a little more like it's all, you know, sort of natural. Is that it? The only problem you had?
Yeah, for the most part.
That's
I just kept playing with different brushes for the breaking of the waves on the front of the ship.
Yeah, yeah. The only thing I'd say here is probably get, now this is nice. You got a little foamy thing here, but I might go, let's see how light this is. Probably get me a little bit of foamy,
A little bit lighter of a foam on the top layers.
Yeah, just because when it hits something, whether it's
it's going to be mixing in a little bit of air and making it
a
little bubbly. Yeah, I had issues with trying to figure a good like color balance, and ended up just sticking with like a washed out gray
you don't
foam.
need it everywhere. And by the way, I'm just using a rough brush again, and then I'm going to come in here again and probably knock some of it out. You know, I could even go further and go and probably pull this out like it's got a little wake. And then I'd have to dial it in again. I tend to make big statements and then I adjust. Does that make sense? Okay, good. What'd you say your major was?
Computer science.
Okay. Is that like programming and all that?
Yeah, programming and looking into like the backgrounds of stuff. So like looking at photos to see if they've been manipulated and stuff.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Almost like forensic stuff. That's interesting. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah.
For like law enforcement or whatever?
Law enforcement or just like general security. So like being in the technical background, going into businesses and securing their software and stuff.
That's interesting. Yeah. I know a guy is a programmer. It's really interesting. I think it's very art-like. You know what I mean? Especially programming. I think it's super art-like. And the guy I know, man, he's just like hyper into it, you know? And him and like three other guys, they got a company, they have their company. They actually do a lot of work for like the CIA and all that kind of stuff. Or the NSA or whoever it is. They've got all this they got all these servers in their house and all this kind of stuff. Okay. Where are you at?
Right here. Thank you.
You have any questions?
I didn't send to you the PSD, but just in case.
That's all right.
I have to work with the titles because I was a little bit behind of some of the effects and how to create some kind of more effective, way of the presentation of the title, which is
well, the title again, that gets into type. You're talking about type treatments or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's kind of like that's its own animal. If you really want to get into type, and type, by the way, for anybody in here, you really should understand type. Okay, well, even if you're not a graphic designer, at least get a fundamental understanding of it. Because one thing you see a lot in the industry is like I've known a million really good illustrators, and their design skills are horrible, and they don't understand type at all. Like Cheryl Savala, I think, and maybe Michelle Donvito, I think both might do type classes. I think both of those teachers are really good. Okay. And I think doing it, I don't think you should, necessarily go do a whole type class if it's going to keep you in school too long or whatever. But I do think you should go down that rabbit hole. And it's also, type to me is a microcosm of design altogether, because type can get very specific. And like when I used to have people working for me, if I had something that was a type project, 90% of the time I had, unless I had to do it myself for some reason, I had 2 or 3 people all the time on staff at this one particular job who were just really, I hired them partly because I knew they were really good at type and they loved type. So every time there was a type thing, I'd go, Ricky, here, you do it. And he'd get all into it. He'd do a great job on it. And he'd do type better than I could do type. You know what I mean? I'm decent with it, but I'm not as good as like probably Michelle Donvito or somebody is, you know what I mean? Or Cheryl.
Right. No, yeah, that's okay.
But I do think that that's sort of its own animal. Okay. And it becomes, you know, a lot of type, by the way, which is interesting, is taste level. Like you got to develop the taste level for what's really beautiful type and all that. I used to have a teacher. He's still over at Art Center, named Richard Keys, right? He's this weird guy who's super into type. And you could stand in the back of the room. I'm not kidding you. You could stand in the back of the room with smaller type than this and go, hey, Richard, what's this typeface right here? And he'd go, oh, that's Avenir condensed. Like, boom, he'd know it every time, man. And it could be this big. And he'd look at it and go, oh, that's, and he'd know. He was a type freak. You know what I mean? Super specific guy, okay? So that's sort of its own animal. I'm more concerned with the overall imagery, right?
Right. And next
say it again.
Time I try to work more in the regular. No, next time I try to work with the regular poster, because definitely is a different develop. Because in this kind of poster, is more there are more limitations because there is not even more treatment with the specific image.
The one thing I'd say is you got to be careful when using this sort of novelty type, right?
Okay, right.
Like, and then you know, and it's just like any other thing. You go, you know, if I'm doing, I don't know, design graphics or infographics or something like that, I'm going to really use a very readable type, a really nice clean type like Avenir or something. That's why you see, Helvetica. It just has lived forever because it's clean and it still looks modern. And it's still, you know, you go look at they rebrand the New York City subway and they go right back to Helvetica. You know what I mean? Because it's like, that looks cool. It looks modern and it's super readable, right?
Right.
Sometimes it's readability. And then you're also, you know, you're trying to pick type that matches the flavor of whatever it is you're trying to do. Does that make sense?
True, yeah.
So if I'm trying to message something sophisticated, like half the time I'm doing stuff that's silly that I message out from the school or whatever. So I have certain typefaces I like that are a little bit fun, but they're not too over the top. Does that make sense?
Yes,
So they're a little bit not
attractive but effective, I guess. Yeah,
and they're super readable, and you know, and I try and match them to whatever my illustration or whatever I'm doing is. Okay, so it's really, you know, it's got to match the messaging, right?
Perfect. Yeah, my other question is, if I in the future work in the title in illustration, it is easy to add the illustration file to the Photoshop.
If you have an illustration file, like a traditional one.
Yeah, that to put into, for example, to work with the separate.
Yeah, you just scan it.
Okay.
You'd scan it though. Make sure you scan it. Don't, you know, take pictures of it or whatever.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit later on.
Okay, cool.
Because a lot of times I mean, especially nowadays, I mean, you might start something. I do this all the time. Start something traditionally, I finish it digitally, you know? And sometimes that's a time thing. I'm like, I'm running out of time on this. I can't finish it this way. I'm going to pull it into Photoshop and I'll paint it in there. I'll finish it in there, right? Then I also, every time I take an image or every time I do a traditional image, I mean, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paintings around me right now that, you know, some of them are finished that are just demos or whatever. And then some of them I'm actually doing for messaging, you know, for the school. And I, you know, if I run out of time with it, I'll probably pull it in and play around with it. I'm going to paint it all traditionally, but even if I don't do anything to it in Photoshop, when I scan it, I got to bring it into Photoshop and adjust it and make sure that the colors are right. Okay. Because the scanner is going to dick with it. It's going to screw around with it. So I'm going to probably juice the color a little bit and get the color back up again. Then I might go in with my saturate tool and just saturate certain sections, because I'll be looking at the real painting and I'll be going, that's really dull right there. And that's not how it looks right here. So I'll pull that and I'll do a lot of work on it just to get it back to looking how it actually looks. Okay. Because the scanner is never going to do that. A photo is never going to do that. You have to adjust them. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
And it's a big deal because if you're a traditional illustrator or if you do a traditional illustration job, when you send that over to the other side, they don't necessarily even know what the original looked like. Does that make sense? So they might come in and start, that's what drives me crazy, by the way. They might come in and start screwing around with it color-wise, which infuriates me, but whatever. So I try and adjust it all up, and I'll make sure that in the email or whatever, I'll be like, hey, I adjusted this, I color adjusted it. Now, the other problem is every single monitor looks different. I mean, I have two monitors here right now. One of them looks totally different than the other. And like trying to get these things calibrated is a huge pain in the ass. I gave up on that. Okay. So what I do is I look at it across my phone. I look at it on this monitor, maybe look at it on my iPad. And then I just look at it in a variety of things. And I go, okay, it's okay. It's reading okay across all these different platforms. Now, if somebody has a horrible monitor, because I've had that happen. I don't think this happens as much anymore, but years ago, somebody did something to something. I remember seeing it and I go, are you crazy? This is like screaming saturated. And they're like, I finally got to the bottom of it and they had a horrible monitor. They had some really bad monitor. And I go, you cannot screw with my work on that monitor. Just leave it alone. It's fine. You know what I mean? I'm going to resend you the file. Don't throw that other file away. Don't use it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So most of the stuff we went over, I don't really have a lot of comments on it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I might soften this up a little bit, like figure out how to get this a little less cut out. And sometimes it's not bad though, but I might, like back here, it looks pretty good. Like right there, see how that edge looks pretty good? Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So just, you know, and back here, it looks pretty good. Just gets a little bit cut out right there. So I might just barely soften that. That's about it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
It's all about edges and lighting. I think we're all in agreement on. Where's Irene Lim?
I'm here. Hello.
What do you think?
It's great.
I like that. It looks like you got him. Did you work on him a little bit? It feels like he's more in the lighting to me.
Yeah, I pushed him a little bit more.
Okay. He's not standing out as much as I remember anyway. Now there's a couple things I might do here. And I don't know, by the way, I don't know if this would even really work. But I'm wondering, I mean, it's a graphic solution, so I don't even know if this is relevant. I wonder if it'll let me do this. Don't do what I'm about to do, by the way. The dreaded magic wand tool. Okay, I'm upping the whatever you call it, the tolerance. I'm just doing this to comp it. I would never do this for real. Ah, shit. Okay, that's not too bad. It's not going to look very good, but it'll be all right to comp. So let's go. So I'm wondering, I don't know. Let's try a couple things here. So let's go. I'm going to take this guy out. And I'm going to take this. And if I want to get rid of this guy, what should I use? At least try.
Oh my gosh, I don't remember the name of it. It's the one where you it'll like copy the background for you, right?
Content aware.
There you go.
Okay, you need to remember that because there's going to be a lot of tools that probably have, I think they do, that have that term in it. Okay. And it just means literally it's aware of the content around itself. Okay. And I'm going to go fill. I need to show you the more crazy tools in this, but I'll do it later. Let's go content aware. Boom. Yeah, not very good, but it'll be all right for this. I would never accept that, obviously. Oh, that's weird. Hang on. I screwed up. Oh, now I know what I did. I'm on the wrong layer. Edit, fill, content aware. See, that's better, right? Still not great, but it's better. Like I could clean up this stuff pretty easily. And plus there's tools in there where you could go in and adjust it. I'll show them to you later. And let's just go. We're on the wrong layer again. Actually, let's try this with a current layer. Let's go to current and below. Okay. Oops. Damn it. There we go. Okay, so now we're cloning without being on the actual layer, which means what are we doing?
You're using the layer beneath it.
So we're doing non-destructive editing because now if I don't like this, I can just get rid of it, right? That make sense?
Yep.
Except now I got them both on the same layer. So now I created a new problem. Hang on. So I'm going to take this guy. Is there actually a constellation of a unicorn?
No.
That'd be kind of cool, actually. Okay, so that looks pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to see something here. I want to see if I can go. What if I take like I don't know if it'll work on here. Let's see. Let's take a pretty hot blue. I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to go to hue saturation. I'm going to click the little button. It blued it up a little bit. Now I want to saturate it a little bit. I don't like that center area, but I'm not going to worry about that. Because I'm just wondering if I could, or if I could go, can I pull this one, this color of his blue, so it makes sense in this environment. And then we'll try this a little differently. Let's try this. I just want to see if this idea works. Oops. I don't know. I might just barely tint them a little bit. Nah, maybe not. Okay, but what I would do is, I think, let's check this because I don't know if this is true either. I'm going to put one behind it. So it's here. That gives it a little more of a glow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that.
You don't want to do this. Yeah, that's not bad. Too much, way too much. Now, okay, it's pretty subtle there, and I think that's a little bit more effective. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it necessarily needs the blue, but I actually like it better the color you have it. But I think if you gain just a tiny bit of a glow, it'd be nice, right?
Yeah, it'd be pretty. Mm-hmm.
Other than that, it looks pretty good. Who is this guy?
I don't know, some rando.
Did you get it from a stock site?
I did.
I was gonna say, so he was probably like pointing at a like a dry erase board or something in a meeting.
Yeah, he was.
Was he seriously?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. I love the one. I just saw a company. It's a big company. I can't remember who it was. And it popped up like in social media, and they were like advertising their, I don't know, their company somehow. And it was just all these. It was terrible presentation. It was all these, like, it was very slick, but every picture that came up was stock photos.
Oh, geez.
You know what I mean? And stock photos are super obviously stock photos.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they always have the guy with the clipboard and the team around him, and he's like talking, and you know, or the guy with the hard hat on the construction site with the architectural plans, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And I was like, this doesn't brand your company. Okay, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
So it was fine, no problems?
Yep, no problems.
Okay, good. Me likey. Where's Caleb? You here? Where's Caleb? I see him. I don't hear him. All right, I'm going to go to Samantha. Oh, I remember this one. Where you at?
That's me.
What do you think? I think I would have spattered this more. I don't. There used to be a stock spatter brush in here.
Yeah, I was having some difficulties, but I mean, I felt like I managed a little.
I would tone this down here. Oh, that's weird. Hang on. Here, 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 here. Okay. You know, I might have just used a spatter brush, not this saturated. I'll change that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was a cool brush.
And then I would have to adjust this red. I always just throw it down and then I adjust it. Like it wouldn't be that. It wouldn't be that. Let's do two things. First thing I want to do is get it to blend into the layer below it if I can. And sometimes that solves my color problem also.
Yeah, I used one of those to darken it.
Now, sometimes I'll get it to blend into the other, the bottom, but it's not quite the right color, and then I'll adjust the color. Let's try, oh, that's not bad. Let's try multiply. Multiply is not bad either. Might pull it down a little bit so I can see through it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe just desaturate it a hair. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, another thing, if I have this, is this blood on the floor?
Yeah, that was an image that I dragged in. And then
So I might, I don't have it. Here, let's see if I can separate it. Oh, shit, hang on. I'm just going to, again, half-ass this, so don't. Irene Lim can just keep her mouth shut about it. All right, so I'm going to saturate it a little bit. Let's see. Okay, let's see if I can do this. That's weird. Hang on. It's doing something weird. Hang on. This is on its own layer, right? Yeah, there it is. Okay,
yeah,
so
it had everything on its own layers.
let's try the. I'm going to try and get it to a little more red.
Okay, I started with like a red, but then it was, for me in my eye, it was blending with the floor a little too much, so I went into like the darker blood.
What I would probably, the simplest way to do this is she's dragging this is I can just come up here and grab something. It's going to get affected by the color underneath it, but I'm just going to, just to get the concept across. I would probably grab something up here and maybe, oops, let's get a better brush. No, that's not good. No, that's not good. Hang on. Let's just try this one. And I'd probably reflect some of the room into that blood stain. Some of this white probably. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm just doing it half-ass. I'd have to go in and like change this and make it make sense. I don't know why it's like, hang on. Am I in the right layer? Yeah, that's weird. I don't know. I might even come up here and screw around with the liquify filter or something like that. Things tend to reflect in, but they'll get a little more complexity on there. But I mean, just to get started, this is too small. That's what's going on. There. Start to break it up a little bit and start to just get a few reflections into it somehow, right?
Right.
And just a little more saturated. You know, blood's outside, you know, blood's not as red as, you know, it's pretty deep red, like kind of like you have it. Any other questions?
So I was gonna put a podium in the middle, like kind of under that image that I have in the middle already.
Yeah.
So I started with that. I wanted a podium. It was like a scary looking podium, but I couldn't get her head because it was covering like half of her head. And since she's on an overlay, like I couldn't find a way other than erasing like the edges of where her head was, but then I didn't like that look.
Well, is she's on her own layer, right?
She was on her own layer, but she was under the overlay, and I had the podium above the overlay layer.
What I would do, because you're talking about having her overlap the podium, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
like,
what I would do is I would go to the layer where she selected. I would place the podium where I want it. I'd go to the layer where she selected. I'd command click the little thumbnail, and that's going to give you that selection. Then I'd go back to the podium layer and just hit delete, and it's just going to knock out everything around her or everything that's in front of the podium. Does that make sense?
interesting. Yeah.
Well, remember we talked about if I have something on a layer that's on by itself, let's say where is it? I think it's this. Like, let's say this layer. I have that on its own layer, right? So if I want to reselect that, all I got to do is go here to this little thumbnail, command click it, and it reselects it for me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do that with her and then go back over to the other layer, then I can just hit delete on the podium layer, and it's just going to take out her part of it. Exactly where she is, because it's from that selection. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's how I would do it.
Okay. Yeah, I was having trouble with that, but then I ended up not using it, and I just used that image in the middle.
Yeah, this is fine. And then you can see right here, this stuff reflecting in the floor, straight down into the floor. See it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just I probably would use a spatter brush and adjust a little bit. But that's about it.
Okay.
Where you at?
Hey, Professor.
I think I would have still given it some lights or something on here and a little blur.
Yeah, I tried doing that, but like it looked like an obvious like red stroke. So
You gotta dial it in.
Yeah.
You'll get better at that as you go.
Yeah.
That's just just getting used to the tools and all that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. You got any questions?
I think I'm good for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you want to control the what do you call that? The blur, like sometimes I'll make a copy of the thing like I did before, and then I'll just make a big smudge brush and I'll smudge it in the direction I want.
Oh, okay.
If I can't quite dial it in with a blur tool or something like that, I'll just do that.
Okay, okay.
And when you do it too, when you use a really big brush and you smudge it, it'll sit there and think for quite a while for some reason, and it'll just like really slowly smudge. It's super weird. And maybe unless you got a really fast computer or something.
Yeah, I'll try that next time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's like everything else. It's just what tool works for the job, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen that show on Netflix?
No.
It's actually, the first couple are really funny.
Oh, is it actually a show?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
It's a comedy.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you think it's Steve Carell and everybody is running this.
Oh, okay.
Everybody's running this program's an idiot.
Yeah.
Are they going to rename that stupid thing? We're not going to keep calling it Space Force, are we?
I hope so.
I keep wanting, and somebody's probably already done this, but I keep wanting to design a logo for it that looks like a 70s Saturday morning kid show.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody's done it already. Because that's what it sounds like. Okay, where's this? Where you at? Who's this? Jordan.
That one is, yes.
The architect?
Yes.
Interesting. So you got this working for yourself right here?
Yeah.
Now, the only thing I like this, I don't really have a lot of comments on it. Do you have any questions about it?
Not mechanics wise, just I guess for design, I wasn't sure what to put on the black on the bottom. Nothing really fit that I could think of.
Well, okay, so one thing you could have done, you know, maybe go and get, let's see if I can do it real quick. Who's he sending this? Okay, hang on. And again, I'm going to totally half-ass this. What happened? Wait a minute, hang on. Maybe we could get, let's just use, let's see. This might work. Let's see. Oops. Yeah, I'm going to try my, that's too big. Let's try our object selection tool right here. Oops. Am I in the wrong layer? Yes. So let's go here. And I'm just going to try the square with this thing right here. Let's see if I get lucky. Good enough. I'm going to invert it. Delete all that. And then I might have gone. And then just really knocked it down with my, hang on. With my levels. Because what you're looking for here is a transition, right?
Right.
I don't want it unreadable. I'm going to try this. Hang on. I'm just going to fill the whole thing instead. See if that works. Oops. Again, I'm going to fill it with a gray, and then I'll see what happens. I'm going to go to a pretty dark gray. Then I'm going to go. Yeah, that's better, right? And then I'm going to, and I get something that looks a little more cabiny where the silhouette was a really clear read. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hang on. And then let's try this. And then let's just grab this. See if we can make this work. And again, I'll make another half-ass selection. This time I'm going to use the lasso tool because it's an odd shape. And I want to try and get it as close as I can. I'm using the object selection tool. And by the way, when you're comping, you really want to use like the object selection tool, things like that, because when you're comping, you're not really trying to get it perfect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
And then I'm going to go here, do the same thing. I'm going to fill it with that gray again. Then go to multiply. And the reason I'm using multiply instead of just black is it's a little bit softer, which I kind of like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I can put like maybe out here, just so it sort of has an environment that it sort of transitions into, if that makes any sense. Let's take this.
It looks
and go here, and then want to, you know, then I'd have to vary these trees a little bit so they don't all look the same. And then lastly, I'd probably come in here, you know, and I'd arrange these so they look cool. And blah, blah, blah. And then here, I'd probably come in here on another layer and go. And again, I'm going to throw this down, then I'll dial it in. Just light up a few little windows in there, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it looks better like that.
So it just gives it a little bit of a transition into the ground. See?
Okay, thank you.
And then I might like, you know, I'd find a cabin shape, by the way, that's way more readable, that really reads as cabin. Or barn in the middle of nowhere, or whatever it is you're going for. And then maybe I'd even have, you know, the chimney and just have some soft smoke going up in the sky just to get it to idea of middle of nowhere. This is terrifying, all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah?
Yeah, thank you.
You guys ever read Communion?
No.
It's just, it came out a long time ago. And there's a weird movie around it. But anyway, it's this writer who was he wrote The Howling or whatever it was called. Anyway, he was a well-known writer, science fiction writer. And then he had a cabin. I forgot where it was. It's in California, I think, or maybe it's upstate. I can't remember. But anyway, and he claims that it just like this environment that they came and they abducted him and visited him and all that kind of stuff. And he wrote this book on Communion. And now that's what he does. He's like this crazy dude who says he's been, abducted by aliens and all that stuff. But the whole story, it looks just like this. I took place like in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
And another thing I might do is now when I get this, if I go, I kind of like this idea, then I might start going, well, maybe I can start to take some of this stuff and maybe have it sort of, you know, have a curve right here where it makes, you know, where this is, and it's not there yet, but maybe there's more of like a curve here where this all starts to sort of curve out of here up to here, like, and maybe it dips a little bit and curves back up here, something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah. So I'm just going to try and find some cool way. So far, I don't like this at all. I like the way it was, but, and if it doesn't work, I just try something else. But I definitely want to make, what I'm always thinking about are transitions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, I want to make sure one thing transitions into another, so it doesn't just transfer into a dead end or dead edge or whatever like that. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And by the way, you're going to need those kind of skills. You're going to be doing presentations. You know what I mean? And I know, like I said, I know a million really good designers who have terrible graphic design skills. Okay, guys, I just went through them all. And they were good. That was overall really good. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm stoked about it. Okay, so what's going to happen is I'm going to put a video up. I want you to look at that, you know, and if you can follow along with it by Wednesday, and then I'll take questions and we'll talk about it in class. That makes sense?
Okay.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna let you go.
Thanks, Mike.
Good job, you guys. Really good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you,
See you
Professor.
Wednesday.
Bye.
All right, you guys.
Thank you. See you later. Thank you so much.